is Lila's Bedtime Stories with Dean Val. I'll be reading from Book 6, Your Dream Book, and Your Dream Visions by Duane, the great writer and world educator. The subconscious arena is part of the individual psychic, which is inaccessible to the personal consciousness and consisting of repressed desires and their associated ideas. It can often disturb the conscious personal life in dreams and phobias, as the primitive self wants to get its pleasures and satisfactions known and experienced. This is so true, as most people add emotion to their experiences, especially their dream dramas and their dream daily works and events that carry you through the day. And the repression of the psychic energy wants to escape and always affects the user in some manner, whether good or bad, according to the individual's self-style. So, a person's dreams, they are usually dragging themselves through those situations. They are constantly deciding, and so instead of resting at night in a peaceful mode, they are continuing their daytime drama on other levels. This is where the human ego very seldom gives itself a rest, but always headstrong and adamant about all the ideas and situations it is involved with, as well as the mental and emotional baggage that it carries. The answer here is real guidance. As a new student of the Real Guides is helped to relieve the unseen pressures from within. The rep systems have been set up in a certain way to install guilt and self-punishment. Most people continue to consider what they are doing with their life is the best course to take. It's almost like a person with no problems is not a person at all. This is the silly, immature human side in control, but actually out of control and lost to what is real. As a protection against shame and punishment, each person establishes a guard over their subconscious realm, which they are usually unaware of, that is always trying to make them do something out of their lower nature. This establishes guards, and it is known as a censor. It is, you might say, many times at war with the ego, the outer established persona that likes the pleasure principle and all its desires. Also, between these two aspects of the mind is another principle which acts as a referee that tries to get the censor and the ego to adjust the differences between them, which would be the real you. Once a recognition of what is transpiring takes place. For most people, it takes a lot of intensive training to see through all their own self-made illusions. The censor is the conditioned side of the individual. Like with those who have a moral upbringing and a conditioned conscience, which wants to deny the pleasures of the ego, or that which would possibly do harm to it. It would be like a man or woman that has been brought up through religious morals and will not have sex before getting married, even though the ego is wanting to have sex or lust for the other person. The moral side, the conscience, will not allow it. So a conflict begins with a person as to what they want and what they supposedly know is best for them. This is where the pleasure principle and the censor face off, thus creating dreams of a similar nature that involves the conflict of the two aspects that have been actually created by each person according to what they accept is their reality. All of this is personal experience, but because of our social upbringing, we are all exposed to certain ideas and ideals as our life continues here. The old saying, let your conscience be your guide, will work if one is possibly the most honest and humble person on the planet. But if they were raised by thieves and murderers, these agreements and actions, according to the conscience, would be definitely different. I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Thanks, Lila. I asked Dwayne once why I don't dream very much, and he said, don't worry about it, you're fine. But I did look into looking at my sensor and talking to my sensor and why I shut my real side experiences off. And I did that for a while, and then I asked him a question, and he said, you're fine. So I let it go. I'm not too worried about it. Occasionally I have a real side experience, but there was something probably I agreed upon to have blanked out pretty much during the dream state that I don't remember. But I do see how it works, somewhat. I see how the sensor is the conditioned part of ourselves, and it wraps itself, on the ego, and so there's a relationship there. And like Dwayne says, as the real awareness comes in, it's the referee or the manager. I see it as like, basically, if we do the new you, we clear all these bodies out. We align them with this all pervasive, this reality, the all is. So that experiences are good. Like I say, personally, I don't have a lot of real side experiences, but I seem to get the awareness or the, what I need with the recognition through just contributing to the humanitarian projects that Dwayne has and singing the new you and sharing what I do get intuitively. So there's many ways to approach the what Dwayne's presenting here. Maybe Tim has some shares too, what he's gone through.
I was listening to Lila as she was talking about the ego and the sensor and the real you. And it's kind of interesting when I think about how the human mind, is that what we would call the ego, that it has its pleasure principle, it wants what it wants.
We
I
can
wasn't.
use that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's really interesting about what makes sense about these human bodies with their physical brain and why we would think with it at all that we were going to last any more than the time we have in the body, because we see the bodies die and the physical brain deteriorates and it doesn't seem to see anymore or hear anymore or have any of its senses anymore. So what is it that makes us think that we have other bodies that survive, that exist, instead of just not being at all? Is it the human mind?
I think
Go
that
ahead,
would
Lila.
be your ego. Your ego would think that there's a lot more to you, and pursue that pleasure principle. That would be your ego, I think.
You're saying that the ego is what thinks it's going to last forever?
Well, I don't know about forever, but boy, that ego is certainly pretty dominant when it comes to human beings, don't you think?
Yeah, it seems to be the one in control on this planet at this time. It seems like the ego is what's in the gods of man and the reptilians. So this sensor in them, what was that? It's the sensor is trying to is making it so you don't feel embarrassed or shame or or punishment.
The way I see the censor is he's kind of like the judge. This is good, this is bad. Tells us what to do, and sometimes he gets a little bit. See, it says here, sometimes the judgments of the censor can be too harsh and demanding because the conditioning of the individual is such that it actually creates a stranglehold on the person instead of letting them make a decision that would possibly relieve a lot of tension. As an example, moral issues are one thing which have been invented with society, and living and surviving are another. Certain social restraints sometimes keeps a person from the real adventure of life. My life has taken certain roads, which I would not recommend to anyone, but for me, it has led me to where I wanted to go, the top of the mountain of the is. My experience has been one of a radical risk taker because I wanted more than what could be had in any normal sense possible. The whole of life is so much bigger and better than any moral determination on this planet. For some people, they do not need to be with their moral issues, and it works for them because I do not lend myself to so much of what others decide is right for them. Does not mean that I am against anything, but merely stating my position with a free will. Very few people will ever attempt what I have. This is how, after almost dying the first time from having the rod of power and taking on all the karma I did and stepping into the real position for the second time is really too much for anyone. But I did it anyway. My chosen life is such that it must be so for me. And I think this is kind of important what he's trying to say. My chosen life is such that it must be so for me. And we do choose our lives, good, bad, or indifferent. That's what we chose. Not only was I married while I was being trained for the real position for the first time, I had a girlfriend, Miss Heather, at the same time. She and I were having nightly experiences with the real guides and going to our own secret island. That's in New Book 2, A Journey to Real Freedom. And New Book 8, Blue Sky Island. What an adventure that is, Blue Sky Island. Oh boy, you have to read about Blue Sky Island, I'll tell you. That's a wonderful and beautiful and exciting story. Okay, so what do you say about that?
Well, I think the censor, we create our own censor through our attitudes and ideas and past life experiences. We're the ones who create our censor, so we can uncreate it or modify it, manage it. I tried, but I see it takes a bit, takes a little doing, and I decided not to go, not to pursue it. I imagine I could, but there's other things to do that I thought had take more priority over it. We can do these. We can do and explore different areas within ourselves, but I prefer right now with what Dwayne's doing. It seems to work to focus on what he's doing, basically, because his focus is on these particular projects that we're doing all over the world. There's one galactic one that's kind of secret right now that is going to be a huge difference in the world. But we have the All-Solar Research Vessel. We have the Nations United University. We have the New School Homeschool. We have all kinds of interesting things that we're doing that, we're all over social media to help people see more of life. But it is interesting that we are the ones who create. We create our sensor, we create our ego, create our bodies, we create our experiences. They're subject to the environment and other people's free will too. There's that too, but we do have more of a creative input than most people believe they do in terms of creation. So it's very interesting to get past what we think, and I always find this for me personally, it's never what I think it is. And I'm using think, but it's never what I consider it to be, or consider it will be or is. It's always so much better, so much more pure and sincere. It's if one just lets it be and lets this reality come in, you allow it to come in, then it will do what it does, and it's quite fascinating. It's just the way it works and the process that we go through to get through ourselves is very, very interesting. It's really really can't explain it, and that's why Dwayne and other real guides use references. They use hints. They use demonstrations. There's all kinds of things that work for each person individually to show them how to see more. And it is on an individual basis. We each have our own way of recognizing and seeing more. But it's the process is quite interesting. It's never, I guess, the cliche never ceases to amaze me. It's an old cliche, but it's just the adventure goes on every day,